I have not stopped buying random Japanese Saturn games, and thanks to that I have more than enough games to make a sequel to my original video talking about obscure Saturn games that I own. A lot of people say that the console was a failure, and while that's not really wrong, the system was the most successful Sega console in Japan and had well over 1,000 games released, and here's a few I stumbled upon. I saw this weird fighting game on Yahoo Japan auctions. I love buying fighting games for cheap and just giving them a go. This one was called D-Xhird.
D-Xhird.
Third? It's pronounced third. Fuck you, I don't accept that. So D-Xhird got me hyped up with its original intro song and classic 90s CGI cutscene. After jumping into the game, you get what seems to be a fairly standard 3D fighter, but it feels far worse than Tekken or Soul Blade, which both came out years before it. It's probably the most stiff and janky 3D fighter I've ever played. I mean, it probably won't make the list of the worst fighting games of all time or anything, but man is this game a complete nothing burger. The story seems pretty straightforward. The protagonist is just known as Boy, which is, okay, sure, and he's hunting down a group that killed both his mother and his lover. Boy also has an evil spirit inside him known as Shadow Boy, which that's very cool, I guess. There's a good amount of stages and characters, but it's just not worth it when it feels so awful to play. If you want an obscure 3D fighter that's actually fun, I instead recommend Last Bronx, developed and published by Sega themselves. First of all, this game comes with a lot of cool art in the manual. It comes with a huge fold-out poster with move list for the characters. It has a bonus disc with all kinds of content, like a mode where you choose characters that will teach you how to play the game. It's fully voice acted and interactive. It's one of the coolest tutorials I've seen in a fighting game. You can watch the characters interact with each other and bicker. There's a lot of dialogue between them. You get to learn the game and get to know the characters at the same time. The game has your standard arcade and versus modes, as well as survival modes where you fight as many opponents as you can with limited health, or time attack where you play through the arcade mode but you go for the speed. Honestly, this game just feels good. It's very smooth, there's a flow to combat that makes it addicting. It's a juggle heavy game and I love that. Your movements also affect your attacks, so it's fun to experiment with the characters' movesets. The game is set in 90s Japan right after an economic crisis and gang warfare has taken over the streets. It's very of its era but in a fun way. It's very grungy and I love the way it looks. It's got a solid roster of characters with their own unique weapons and I can't get enough of the 90s nighttime Japan aesthetic. I highly recommend giving this game a shot. It's always fun to explore lesser known fighters, especially ones like Last Bronx where you can tell that there was a lot of passion and effort put in. This game feels like such a complete package, and the fact that you get so many game modes and bonuses makes it feel all the more worthwhile. Touge King the Spirits 2 was among the massive bundle of games I got alongside the console itself. The first game in the series was released in North America under the name High Velocity Mountain Racing Challenge, which is a mouthful. It seems simple at first glance, but this game is pretty challenging. While both Touge games on Saturn only come with 3 stages each, the stages have different time of day settings, weather conditions, and can be driven in reverse. You choose your car, which can also be tuned, and partake in a bunch of different game modes. The main one being King Battle, where you race one rival through the streets and try to overtake them. You can also do time trials and 2-player versus. You can drive manual or automatic, and the handling feels pretty good. It certainly aims for realism, and it just gives me such strong Initial D vibes. Drifting down the mountainside roads of Japan and all that. After you finish the race, you also get a replay mode where you can speed up, go in reverse, pause, go frame by frame, change the camera angles, and just mess around and try to make cool little shots. And you can save the replays too. Something else I think is fun is that you've got all these in-game magazine pages to look at, which you'll see advertised in the stages too. There was also a King and Queen contest where people could submit photos of themselves with their car to try to get into the game. You can look at all the submissions here. The confidence in some of these stances goes so hard. I love it. And others are just like wholesome looking people chilling with their car. It's so great. There's something so cute about this whole thing. I might not be a car guy or anything, but I respect King the Spirits too, and I think it's worth a try. There were a lot more entries on the PS1, including Touge Max, which released in the West under the name Peak Performance, and the final entry, Touge 3, was released in Europe under the name Road Rage 3. It's really weird how all over the place the localized names were, but regardless, this is a pretty solid series. Pro Yakyuu Team Tsukurou is part of the Let's Make series where you manage or create teams. In this game, you're making a pro baseball team. It's officially licensed by Japan's Baseball League. If you didn't know, baseball is huge in Japan, and this is not the first game of its kind, but it's the first one made by Sega themselves. The art style is so goofy. I kind of prefer the cutesy style that Konami had on their similarly titled Yakyuu Powerful Pro Yakyuu S, which released 1 year earlier, but I appreciate the silly vibe of this Sega title. You select your team, sponsors, and players, and I appreciate the presentation of this game, all the low poly, angular, but still kinda rounded designs. There's news presentation segments talking about how your team did during games. It's a neat little thing, even if I'm not really interested in baseball. R?MJ The Mystery Hospital, released on the PS1 and Sega Saturn. It's an FMV adventure game where everything is pre-rendered CGI. Every time you move, you're shown little scenes or transitions. You just go around, interact with things, find key items, and explore. But the cutscenes and story is where the real magic is. This game has such a weird vibe to it. After the funny opening cutscene showing the characters doing their day-to-day stuff, as well as, a casual traffic accident, we get this really weird slideshow thing explaining the backstory to us. And all these weird words are written on every picture, like enigma and cute. It's so weird. I love it. Our friend Ryo was in a traffic accident, and the protagonist, Hajime, has come to check up on him. Ryo is doing fine though, but that's when all hell breaks loose and there's explosions and fire, and now they have to escape the hospital where spooky demonic shit is happening, and a weird disease begins to spread. The directing of the cutscenes is so weird, like they switch camera angles and zoom and pan all the damn time, and I dig it, honestly. The music is also just really strange. It feels simple, almost kind of rushed, like they didn't have a lot of time to fine tune it. It feels rough around the edges, but it also adds to the game's really weird charm. It feels dreamlike in the best kind of way. So you explore the hospital with your friend Ryo and other survivors, trying to get out alive. Eventually you get separated from the group, and you have to spend like 20 minutes wandering around in a big protective suit with this breathing sound that's happening non-stop. This section is kind of boring, but it tries to expand on the lore of the virus and the hospital itself. Eventually you learn about an ancient species of super evolved humans who are like funny water people. It's fucking crazy. This game is just nuts, and I love that. If you've seen my Deep Fear review, this is the same developer, although Deep Fear is a much better game. It had a higher budget and assistance from Sega themselves. This game, however, is a lot more simple and a lot more goofy. Another one I got from that initial pile of games was Kekkon Marriage. Kekkon literally means marriage, so the game's title is basically just Marriage. It's a visual novel dating sim, but I think it's a pretty neat one. The art style is just very appealing to me, and I like that you can choose your gender, which in turn lets you date men or women. Sadly, you can't be gay, but it's fun to get the choice. You get to choose between 5 guys and 5 girls. You're a regular adult working a regular day job, which you can choose the job you want to have as well. You've recently been a part of a program which has set you up with other people looking for partners. You can choose who you want to reach out to, and you've also got to figure out what time of day works best for your schedules. You've got this neat little pager type thing that you use to manage and check stuff. They want you to feel really immersed, which I think is fun. You even choose like your budget and stuff. I can't see myself putting a lot of time into this game, but I appreciate it. And Shimura is great. He's adorable, and he's mine. Fuck you. The last one I just want to give a shout out to is Densha De Go EX. This is the final version of the first game in the series with some added content. It's a train simulator that started out as an arcade game, but it was later ported to the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, and Sega Saturn, with the Saturn essentially being the best version of the first game in the series, from what I know at least. It's a vibe. They've recreated actual stops, trains, and lines in Japan, but sort of scaled things down a bit. It came with unique controllers that you could buy for a more immersive experience, but playing it with a regular controller works okay too. You gotta adjust the brakes and speed and be mindful to stop at the correct spots in the stations. You can go a little over or under, but too far and you'll lose. You got a limited time to reach each station, so you have to master speed and braking. And be careful not to switch on the emergency brakes, as it can cause people to fall over. There's some funny animations for the people on the train for when you make mistakes. I don't know, I love that stuff. There's a lot of extra details going on. It's a real vibe. The visuals and the ambience is just kind of nice to take in. Once you start getting comfortable with the controls, the game is very relaxing. They did a good job creating the atmosphere for it. Also, the opening cutscene is fucking bonkers, and I love it. This series is really neat, and I'm glad I got this game. And that's all the games I want to share this time. I still have more games I could cover. After all, there were a lot of Saturn games released in Japan. Hopefully you found something fun to check out or just enjoyed my ramblings. That's all I got for you this time. Thanks for watching.